We begin this hour in New York, where high-profile financier Jeffrey Epstein pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking today. He's accused of paying underage girls to engage in sex acts with him. After his appearance, a lawyer for some of the alleged victims spoke to reporters.
It is time for Jeffrey Epstein and those who participated in these sex crimes to be brought to justice.
Epstein was arrested on Saturday night as he returned to New York from France on his private jet. He faced similar accusations more than a decade ago, but made a secret plea deal to avoid major jail time. Epstein will remain in custody until his bail hearing this Thursday. For more on this, I want to bring in Devlin Barrett. He's a national security reporter with The Washington Post who's been covering the Epstein case. So Devlin, take us through the details that were revealed in the indictment that was unsealed today.
So what we found out today from the indictment is that prosecutors have built a case around Epstein's alleged crimes against girls, teenage girls, in his mansion on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. They say he sexually abused girls there, and it's a pattern of conduct that dates back more than 10 years, very similar to the conduct that he arranged a pretty lenient plea deal for more than a decade ago.
Part of the interesting thing from that press conference this afternoon is that both prosecutors and the FBI made a direct appeal for other victims to reach out to them. What does that tell you about the nature of their investigation?
Well, it tells you, one, that a lot of this conduct is fairly old and that they are basically asking the public's help into understanding the full breadth of the alleged crimes here. And what prosecutors said in court also today was that they are already getting calls in response to those appeals. So there may be more that comes from this in terms of the criminal case, but they just don't know yet. They have to go through these conversations. They have to go talk to any potential witnesses and see if their versions match up with what the evidence they've already gathered.
One of the other things that makes this case interesting to people around the world is the number of prominent names that Jeffrey Epstein is connected with. Do you think that Epstein's case will just be the beginning?
I think that it's kind of a mistake to view the case that way. You got to remember, as much as he did socialize and spend a lot of time with rich and famous people, that's frankly what he was best known for, besides obviously these horrible cases and these horrible accusations. You know, there's not a ton of evidence that the prosecutors have not made that kind of assertion about him. When they talk about co-conspirators in these cases so far, they've been talking about Epstein's own employees who basically brought these girls to him.
And we know that Epstein will be held in jail until at least the 11th, but what are the next steps in this case?
So we expect to have a bail hearing in the coming days, and that will be probably be a fairly contentious hearing because prosecutors want him to stay in jail until he goes to trial. Obviously, Epstein can afford the very best lawyers in the country, and they have already started arguing that he should be released on some kind of bond package. So we expect a pretty big fight there. But you know, look, from the prosecutor's point of view, this is someone who has already been charged and pleaded guilty to one version of these crimes, and now they say, even in a recent search, they found new evidence of these potential crimes just this weekend when they searched his mansion.
And, you know, I guess they would also argue that he could be a flight risk, right? If you have your own private
Well, exactly.
jet.
Not one, but two. He has two private jets, and, you know, he owns his own island. You know, they present him as basically someone, no one has more means of flight than Jeffrey Epstein, according to prosecutors.
Devlin, thank you. That was Devlin Barrett, national security reporter with The Washington Post, joining us from Washington. We talked more about the charges against Jeffrey Epstein with Roland Riopel. He's a former U.S. federal prosecutor and worked in the offices of the Southern District of New York. We asked him why he thinks Epstein is being charged now.
You know, it's very interesting to me that this charge has been brought at this point in time. Having read the indictment, the conduct involved is all 10 years or more old, 15 years old, and is very similar to the conduct that was charged in Florida. Indeed, two of the three victim witnesses described in the indictment allegedly performed the sex acts in question in Florida. not New York. There is only one witness that the government has alleging that Mr. Epstein committed sex acts with a minor in New York. So it's odd that this is brought now. It seems like this is a bit of a grudge match from the Department of Justice to right the wrong of the improperly light sentence imposed on Mr. Epstein back 10 years ago in the District of Florida. It looks to me like the Department of Justice has authorized this case to try to make up for the very negative perception of its actions in Florida many years ago. So I think that's what's motivating this.
That was Roland Riopel, a former U.S. federal prosecutor with the Southern District of New York.